I trust you're doing good. I want to welcome you into this brief class. My name is Victor Okot, and I am a lecturer of human anatomy and physiology at Trisent Medical College. Today, I want us to look at human anatomy and human anatomy and physiology. Simply, we want to look at the human body beyond the perspective of being male or female. We want to look at how the body is structured and how the body functions. So, in this particular class, I want us to look at the introduction to human anatomy as well as introduction to human physiology. Then, I want us to also look at the organization of the human body. And this particular lecture is going to be very brief because the two elements that I want to look at today are very short ones. Now, when we talk about human anatomy, mostly people get confused. Human anatomy, we refer to the structures and the interdependence of those structures. But when we refer to physiology, then we look at how these structures function. So you can say that human anatomy refers to the scientific study of the various structures and organs of the body and how they interrelate, how they interdepend, how one organ fuses with another organ, or starts up another organ, or communicates with another organ in order to perform a particular biological function. So, human anatomy refers, therefore, to the study of various body structures and organs, and with a view of establishing how they are interrelated. Coming to physiology, we want to look at how these organs and structures function. And in our attempt to understand how they function, we must look at their basic units. In physiology, therefore, we look at the cellular functions and we also look at what we call tissues. We want to look at how the cells of the body function and also how the tissues of the body function. You will understand or you will agree with me that externally the body looks fused, but internally the body is so congested. There are very many organs and structures which are crowding the internal system or internal environment of the body. You will also confirm that in the body, these organs that we have must work together with other organs to help it function, to help it achieve a particular biological program. So, in trying to understand the organization of the human body, let us understand from the atomic perspective. The body is made up of atomic molecules which combine to form cellular subunits, and the cellular subunits combine to form what we call a cell. So inside the human cell, there are cellular subunits known as cell organelles. And these cell organelles, they are very many and they have unique functions which they play. The cellular organelles or subunits include the nucleus, includes the chromatin, the ribosomes, lysosomes, cell membrane, among others. We are going to look at them. And the cells which we have in our body are very many. It is believed that in an average human, there are between 100 to 150 million cells. And these cells, they work differently. However, they form or they are fused such that they help the body achieve various functions and they behave as if the body is a single unit. Now, when we bring many cells together, we get what is called a tissue. So tissue is simply a group of cells which perform similar roles. These cells could also be similar in terms of their shape and structure. So when we bring cells together which are similar in terms of what they do and also maybe their structure, we get what is referred to as a tissue. When we bring tissues together, we get what is called an organ. A tissue is simply a specialized cell which when combined, we get the body can now begin certain functions. The body can now extract, for example, waste from the body. The body can now receive signals. The body can now begin the body can now receive signals. The body can now begin the oxidation process, the ossification process, among others. Now, when we bring tissues together, they are fused to form what is called an organ. So, an organ is simply a structure of the body that is made up of groups of tissues which are similar in terms of what they do and in terms of their anatomic structures. But you will remember that the human body is made up of what is called organ systems. So when we're looking at the structure of the human body, we need to realize that we start from the smallest, the atomic molecules, then we come to cells, then we come to tissues, and then we go to organs. Now, two or more organs make up what is called an organ system. So the body, or what is called an organism, is made up of cellular subunits, the cells, the tissues, the organs, and the organ system. An example of an organ system simply is the reproductive system, respiratory system, the skeletal system, endocrine system, lymphatic system, lymphatic system, the integumentary system, the nervous system, the circulatory system. There are very many. So, in the structuralization of the human body, we say that the human body is segmented right from what is so tiny, what we cannot see with our naked eyes, and that is where the microscopic anatomy comes to aid. So, having defined anatomy, having defined physiology, having given you the insight of what is making up the human body, let us now understand the branches of anatomy. Now, in clinical practice, it is prudent if we understand how anatomy and physiology are structured. Number one, I want you to understand that in human anatomy, that they are classed, it is classed basically into two. That is, what we can see and touch, and what we can't see. Neither can we touch. Or if we touch, then it will be a whole big area touched. You cannot say you have touched a particular cell. So when we want to discuss the branches of anatomy, then we must broadly categorize or class anatomy either as macroscopic or microscopic. So macroscopic anatomy involves or pertains the study of structures and organs of the body which we can see and touch. Microscopic anatomy involves or refers to the study of the human body but paying attention to what we can physically see and touch. Macroscopic anatomy is also referred to as gross anatomy. Then we have what we cannot see. It is referred to as microscopic anatomy. So, microscopic anatomy refers to the study of the human body as well as functions of those particular parts or segments we cannot see or touch. For example, we cannot see without an aid a single cell. We cannot see a single blood cell. We cannot see or touch, let's say, uh, the blood serum. So when we define the term microscopic anatomy, we can also say it is also histology, the study of areas of the body which we can neither touch nor see with our naked eyes. Histology, if we are to class it, we will also talk about serology and cytology. Cytology refers to the scientific study of cells, how the cells perform biological functions, how the cells make food, for example, how the cells generate ATP, adenosine triphosphate, by addition of one molecule of oxygen to adenosine diphosphate. We will also see, so when we say cytology, we will also see how the cell membrane functions and what is making up the cell membrane, the two phospholipid layers and one protein layer. We shall also see the pores, what is making human cells to be referred to as semi-permeable. When we go back to serology, here we are looking at the blood serum. We want to look at blood and its antigenic properties. We want to look at why a person could be blood group A, rhesus factor B positive. Could be blood group A, rhesus factor negative. Yet another person born of same woman, same home, same father is having a blood group O, rhesus factor positive. We will also see the role of red blood cells in as far as blood transfusion is concerned. So that if you are blood group O, let's say negative, which class of blood are you supposed to receive? If and when your blood group A, let's say positive, who can transfuse blood? If and when your blood group A, let's say positive, who can transfuse blood? Who can give you their blood? So those are basically what we will study under serology, or simply under histology. Now, we will also, still under histology or microscopic anatomy, try and understand what is called generation and propagation of nerve impulses. We shall see how the cell body, or what is referred to as the soma of the neuron, can sometimes generate its own message to the brain, and also how it sometimes codes information sensed through various sensory mechanisms and then packaged to and sent to the brain axonally. We will also see the various functions of the neurons, so that when somebody talks about an impulse or a stimulus being sent to the brain, we will understand the role of microscopic anatomy so deeply, because it involves the functions of various parts of the body. Do not forget that anatomy simply deals with the structure and organs, but physiology now deals with their functions. And as we look at the functions, we start from the cellular. Remember, as a college student, you should be aware that everything that happens in the human body, all biological programs, all metabolisms occur cellularly. In other words, they occur inside the human cell. Also, still under microscopic anatomy, we shall also venture into understanding the functions of red blood cells, white blood cells, and thrombocytes. Remember, these are blood components. These are cellular or formed elements of blood. So we shall also see how the agranulocytes and granulocytes function. So that if somebody says, I am having asthma or allergic reaction, you will be able to know which class of white blood cells will be formed by the blood and will be sent to attack that particular foreign element. For example, if somebody has allergic reactions, then it means a class of white blood cell known as basophils, which are actually granulocytes. These are the class of white blood cells which fight allergens. So we will also see categories of agranulocytes, or those white blood cells which are not granulated, which do not have rough surfaces, monocytes and lymphocytes. We shall see how they function. And as a clinical student or as a college student, I am taking cognizant that you must have undergone some of this training, and therefore you are not so invalid when it comes to the knowledge of human anatomy. Now, I want us to go back to the gross anatomy because we are looking at the branches of anatomy. Now, gross stroke macroscopic refers to what we can see. For example, there's this branch of human anatomy known as living anatomy. This involves or refers to the study of human body, a human body, or let me say, this refers to the study of live humans. You are studying the human body of a live human being. It means we cannot use dissection to study the live human, but we can use techniques such as percussion or auscultation to do the study. We can use, for example, the MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, so that we can establish the problem at a particular organ, which could even be so deep inside the body. We could use the Tesla, the ultrasound, the X-ray. These are simply techniques which are used during clinical practice to unearth or establish a clinical problem. For example, if there is, we are suspecting that you could be having hernia, you are to be subjected, let's say, to a computer tomography. Let's say to a computer tomography. The CT scan will unearth the type of hernia, how deep it has gone, or the level of damage it has created, and we'll be able to see it externally. So these are techniques which are used to study live humans. Now, there's another one called developmental anatomy, another branch. Developmental anatomy is also referred to as embryology. This involves the scientific study of human beings right from the point fertilization takes place. That particular point, the male and female gametes meet. That particular point, there is a membrane that forms to cover the newly fused cells. That particular time, the fertilized egg can receive no more sperms or can accept no more sperms inside. That particular time, the child, or let me say, the being inside the human body is referred to as a zygote. We look at the study, we look at the propagation or the division of the cells. We look at how cells divide until one day a fetus is formed. So when we say embryology, then it means we study the human development, human growth. From that particular time, the cells, the male and female cells meet. So as we endeavor to study this, we also look at the mechanisms, developmental anatomy, also known as embryology, provides us with the mechanisms by which changes occur during the fetus development or fetal development. There is another branch referred to as clinical anatomy. Here, simply, we are looking at the application of the knowledge to clinical practice or during clinical practice. And this is the most fundamental branch of human anatomy, where you apply the knowledge. For example, you know the function of the heart. You also know the position of the human heart. If, for example, you realize that a patient has a problem with the heart, then you can quickly understand that the problem can only be handled by somebody who is a specialist in the heart and its functions. Somebody who has in-depth training or deep training as far as the human heart is concerned. If somebody has skin rashes, if somebody has a problem with their skin, then you can quickly understand that they have a problem with integumentary system. They have a problem, let's say, with the formation of melanin or keratin. You apply the knowledge which you have in the clinical you practice. We also have another branch of anatomy referred to as topographic anatomy, also known as the surface anatomy. Topographic anatomy enables us to locate the position of an internal organ from the outer surface of the body. The topography of the body as either superior, inferior, distal, proximal, caudal, radial. These are positions of the body. These are topographies, or let me say, geographic. I don't want to use the term geographic, but let me use it so that I can demystify this. It is simply the geographic location of various organs and structures within the human body. Now, having looked at the introduction to human body, human anatomy and physiology, let me remind you, because it is good to be reminded, that the human body is the sum of its parts, and these parts can be studied at various levels of organization. the sum of its parts. And these parts can be studied at various levels of organization. The first part, we talked about atomic molecules. Atoms are the smallest units of the body. And you remember two or more atoms when formed or when fused, they form what is called a molecule. And these molecules are very important inside the human cells because they make up what is called cell organelles. Cell organelles are simply cellular subunits which biologically have got various functions. I gave an example. For example, the nucleus. It controls all the activities of the cell, and it is also where the genetic materials are domiciled. It is where the DNA and our RNA materials are stored. Now, after the atomic molecules, remember we said they are organelles. After the organelles, we have what is called the cells. And a cell, simply the smallest unit of life that is structurally and functionally independent. Cell is the smallest unit of life which or that is structurally and functionally independent. When we say that a cell is structurally independent, it means that each cell has its own boundary. Each cell has what is called cell membrane or the plasma membrane that encloses its inner compartments. This cell membrane provides the distinguishing factor or the boundary between this a particular cell and the neighboring cells. So cell is said to be structurally independent because it has its own structure thanks to cell membrane. A cell is also defined as functionally independent because in each cell are cell organelles, and these cell organelles biologically conduct functions based on the communication emanating from the brain. For example, if and when somebody has annoyed you, that moment you are growing in fury. We refer to it as anger development phase. That particular time, your brain is interpreting the stimulus that just came in. It was an insult, for example. So it means it was an auditory information. It got in through the ears. The brain is processing it at the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex. And once it has been processed, now that you are growing in anger, it means you are now aware of the damage the person caused as a result of uttering certain words. You are insulted, and now that damage, you want to retaliate. Let's say you want to physically retaliate. You want to fight this person. Now, during that time, there is what is called an axis that occurs between the brain or the nervous system and then the endocrine system and then to the hypothalamus within the endocrine system and then to the pituitary gland, also known as hypophysis, and then to the adrenals, both the left and the right adrenals. The adrenals will manufacture a neurotransmitter known as adrenaline. Once it is manufactured, and its manufacturing is controlled by autonomic system How damaging the message was dictates the amount of adrenaline that is formed. If it was just a simple insult, the adrenaline might not be formed in large quantities. There will be what is called hypoproduction of adrenaline. But if and when the insult was so damaging, was so purging, was so corrosive, then the body will respond by manufacturing adrenaline in high quantities, what we call hyperproduction of adrenaline by the adrenal glands. The adrenaline will be discharged onto the body, or what to say, onto the bloodstream. Now, it will be discharged axonally. Now, during that time, all the cells of the body will be conditioned to manufacture adenosine triphosphate, or what we call calories, and send and deposit onto the blood, which then will be transferred to all muscles of the body. So again, after the cells, we now have the tissues, a group of cells which are similar in terms of function and in terms of structure. We can also say a group of cells which function together. For example, of course, we will look at them. We have four tissues in the human body: the connective tissues, for example, the tendons, the bones, the blood. Then we have the muscle tissues. Here, we talk about the muscles of the body. Here, those that are having keratin and those that do not. Then we have the epithelial tissues. In the epithelial tissues, we have compound and simple. For example, simple squamous epithelial tissues, simple cuboid epithelial tissues, simple columnar epithelial tissues. Then lastly, we have the nerve tissues. The nerve tissues are also referred to as the neurons. They are part of the nervous system. The neurons are the building blocks, or the structurally and functionally independent units of the nervous system. And because we will handle it later, there is no need to deeply delve into them. Now, after the tissues, because I was reminding you, remember, we move to organs. And now you can say these are tissues which function together. And after the organs, we have the organ system. And after the organ system, what we have now is called the organismal, what we call the human being, the wholesome human. Now, before I take a break, I want us to look at the characteristics of life. You as a student, you as human, there are basic characteristics. Some of them you met so long ago when you were, I think, when you were in class 4 or lower or upper secondary, lower secondary. When we talk about characteristics, simply we refer to attributes, we refer to features, we refer to things that provide commonalities. We refer to things which are common to anything, or any, let me say, any organism that possess life. I'm not referring to plants. Right now, I'm referring to animals. For example, you all know that living things move. So movement is the first characteristic of life. And movement simply change in position of the body or a body part. It involves movement of the body or just a part. That is a characteristic of something that is alive. Dead people do not move. So it means they cannot be live. Dead people are not responsive. So, number two, the second characteristic of life is called responsiveness. Here, we say that all living organisms have got reaction to internal and external changes. Anything that has life must show or exhibit reaction to what is happening in the environment and to what is happening inside. I can give you an example. If and when it is cold, and you know coldness is a factor of the environment, your body, the integumentary system, through what we call soma aesthetic mechanism of acquiring or of sensation, soma aesthetic mechanisms of sensation, your body will acquire such signal that it is very cold outside, and it will send the signals will be sent to the brain. The brain will make a judgment because it will process and make a judgment, and then you will put on something that can something that is warm, that can keep you warm. Now that means you are responsive, you are able to react to what is happening to you externally. Also, that moment you are hungry, it means the stomach walls have shrunk, and that shrinking begins a communication. The parasympathetic nerve tissues will, which is a component of the autonomic nerve tissues, will communicate. It means if the brain makes appropriate judgment, then it means you would have to eat. It means, therefore, you are being responsible or you are responsive to what is again taking place inside your body. Then we have something called growth. Growth refers to permanent change in size and shape. Growth is irreversible. Once you have grown, let's say to above 1 meter, there is nothing that can reverse it to below 1 meter. So all living things, every organism that is alive must grow. Then we have what is called reproduction. Organisms must have, all of them have mechanism to give forth life, to give forth offsprings which possess their genetic materials. I know some of you may say there are human beings that cannot give birth. Such cases will also be studied here, and those come because of disorder. The inability of a particular organ or structure, or inability of the hypophysis or the pituitary gland to manufacture certain primary endocrine neurotransmitters. So we shall see that later. Then we also have another function of, one characteristic of life, and that is digestion. All living organisms have got a mechanism of extracting useful nutrients from the foods that we eat and make use of them. When human beings eat, During the process of digestion, where the food is mechanically and chemically digested, it will reach a point within the ileum where now the villi and microvilli, in millions and millions of them, extract or absorb the nutrients from that food and then transport towards the blood. Now, every live human, every living organism must have digestive mechanism. Then there's this thing called absorption. Absorption is simply movement of substances, I've just explained it, through membranes into fluids. Now, during that digestive process, the villi and the microvilli will absorb and then transport to the blood. The blood will transport to cells, to metabolic sites, so that the nutrients can be used by the body depending on its function. For example, if and when there is a nutrient that has been extracted which is proteinous in format, then it means it will be used for growth, or what we call increase in size of the body or increase in shape of the body. But if and when it is a starch, a carbohydrate, in its simplest form, let me say monosaccharide, it is an energy giving a nutrient. So it means the cells will use it during the formation of adenosine triphosphate and send that energy to the blood so that the blood can transport it ex situ to all muscles of the body. Then we have circulation. Circulation is simply the movement of the lymph, the movement of blood across the body. We shall also look at them later in our next classes. When we talk about blood, when we talk about the lymph, when we talk about another fluid of the body, could be mucus, also could be the saliva. These fluids are moved around the body through various mechanisms. For example, the lymph is a blood without color. It is moved through the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system, we are talking about the lymph, the lymph nodes, and the lymphatic channels. An example of a lymphatic fluid is a monocyte and lymphocyte, white blood cells that do not have granules, also known as granulocytes. When we talk about blood, we will talk about the cellular component, and we shall also talk about the fluid portion. The fluid portion, simply the plasma and other organic and inorganic contents. When we talk about the cellular, I had explained it earlier, we refer to what is called the formed elements. The cellular portion of blood. The lymphocytes, the leukocytes, white blood cells, erythrocytes, red blood cells, and platelets, also known as thrombocytes. We shall see the shape of the white blood cell and the shape of the red blood cell. We shall see the size of the red blood cell against that of the white blood cell. We shall see why red blood cells are capable of attracting molecular oxygen, or let me say atmospheric oxygen, and then transport it to all cells. We shall also see why White blood cells have got nucleus when red blood cells do not. We shall see why red blood cells contain red pigments which have got high affinity for oxygen known as hemoglobins when white blood cells do not possess hemoglobins. Last but not least, another characteristic of life is called assimilation. Simply changing nutrients into chemically different forms. You see, when we shall be looking at digestion sometimes later, we will understand how chemical digestion occurs, how the hydrolysis of food occurs, how the enzyme tyalin or the salivary amylase begins the chemical digestion of starch, how gastric amylase continues it until it moves to the intestinal amylase and then its final products. Lastly, all living organisms must have a mechanism of removing waste from the body, and that is called excretion. So, excretion is another characteristic of life. All organisms, because of various metabolisms, have waste accumulation in the body. There are nitrogenous wastes, and these nitrogenous wastes are removed through what we call filtration through the kidneys. Then we also have feces as waste of digestive process. Feces are removed through the anus. So we shall also see later when we will be looking at the digestive system how various wastes are removed from the body. But we will also pay more attention when we shall be looking at the urinary system, how the nitrogenous wastes are removed with keenness on how ammonia is converted into a compound known as urea. Ammonia is converted through the addition of a molecule of carbon 4 oxide at the liver or by the liver. And this makes what is called urea, which is less toxic to the body. So that marks the end of this first class. I hope and trust that we will continue to interact. If you have questions, you can ask in the chat box, but I want you to do the following assignment. Number one, define the term gross anatomy. Define the term gross anatomy. Number two, highlight major differences between histology and gross anatomy. Highlight major differences between histology and gross anatomy. Number three, state and explain the structural organization of the human body. State and explain the structural organization of the human body. Number four, state any five organs of the human body. Thank you and may God bless you. Once again, my name is Victor Okot and I am a lecturer of Human Anatomy and Physiology at the Trisent School of Medical Health Science and Technology. Rosie, Atiego.